Tensions in the Middle East are rising by the minute as a result of Israel's confrontations with Hamas and Hezbollah. Today, Israeli fighter jets bombed the Gaza Strip, destroying buildings one by one. Hamas targets in these areas were eliminated one by one. Several Hamas militant leaders were assassinated. Furthermore, following the Gaza Strip, Israel has continued to obstruct the supply of food, gasoline, and medication to Gaza. Today, Israel's attention has switched to its northern borders with Syria and Lebanon. Clashes and bombings have become more common in these two countries. In a recent statement, the Israeli army stated that it targeted Palestine, Syria, and Lebanon all at the same time after missiles landed on open ground in the occupied Syrian Golan Heights. In response to the mobilization of radicals near the Syrian border, Israel launched a large offensive attack. Previously, Israel faced fire from militants in southern Lebanon who launched rockets into Israel. The borders of all three countries are currently under threat. Following the Israeli attacks, recent news from the region says that Israeli fighter jets are targeting Palestinian militant targets every minute. This is a recent development that has received extensive coverage in the international media. While Israeli strikes are putting Lebanese Hezbollah and Hamas fighters in a difficult situation, Tel Aviv has refused to withdraw the strike order. This was already clear from Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's statements that the Gaza Strip attacks were just the beginning. The Lebanese are concerned by Israel's siege of the Syrian and Lebanese borders, the embargo on militant targets in Palestine, and the decision to continue striking until they are destroyed. According to the NNA, Lebanese Prime Minister-designate Najib Mikati indicated that Lebanon does not want to become involved in the ongoing war between Israel and Hamas. During a meeting with Lebanese Foreign Minister Abdullah Abu Habib, Mikati emphasized that Lebanon does not want to be drawn into the ongoing crisis and is seeking to avoid it. Mikati went on to emphasize that the Lebanese government's greatest priority is to ensure security and stability. Although Lebanon and Israel are considered adversaries, a ceasefire has generally held since their clashes in 2006. However, in the Middle East, Lebanon is aware of how Israel will respond to these strikes, and as a result, the situation is rising. In contrast to Lebanon's declarations, Israel stressed that there will be a response to the attacks and that military preparations will continue. According to Israeli news sites, Israel has just increased the number of reservists to 360,000. According to Israel's chief military spokesman, the current struggle against Hamas is unique, and all options are on the table. Following the announcement of this decision, the IDF verified the killing of about 1,500 Hamas militants on Israeli territory. This amount does not appear to include Hezbollah fighters seeking to launch attacks on Israel from Syria and Lebanon. However, excluding Lebanese Hezbollah, Iranian-backed armed factions are projected to suffer significantly bigger losses. While Israel continued to attack Syrian and Lebanese militant targets along its northern front lines, there was still action near the Gaza Strip. A helicopter, gunship, and drone helped Israeli forces engage in firefights with Palestinian fighters in the Israeli city of Ashkelon before they resumed offensive operations. In the aftermath, the conflicts in Gaza are increasingly likely to deteriorate into a regional conflict involving Lebanon's Hezbollah organization and even Iran. As a result, Israeli authorities continue to urge Palestinians escaping the bombardment to leave Gaza. Meanwhile, as you may be aware, Israel has cut off the region's food, electricity, and gasoline supplies, as well as increased pressure on Gazans to escape before the onslaught. When asked where Palestinians in Gaza should go, officials suggested they use the Rafah border, crossing into Egypt. Egypt, on the other hand, closed the Rafah border, crossing on Monday after an Israeli airstrike on the border terminal. Even when conditions are calm, most Gazans are unable to cross the border without special permission from Egypt, which residents claim is practically impossible to obtain. In contrast, the IDF is not in charge of border crossings. The Israeli army spokesperson's office promised a response. Tel Aviv later sent Egypt a message saying, "If you supply Gaza, we will shoot the trucks," according to Channel 12 TV's defunct social media network. Egyptian Rafah border officials alerted Palestinians of an anticipated Israeli attack and advised them to escape. Israel is reducing the space between Hamas and Hezbollah battles. The Israeli Air Force's bombardment is eroding Hezbollah's influence. How will Iran react? The latest Hamas strike on Israel proves Iran's policy works. This is not an isolated instance. Iran fuels a regional confrontation that includes Hamas strike and Hezbollah's intended attack on Israel. Therefore, the U.S. must be much more proactive in these disputes. The U.S. plan coordinates information, financial, and diplomatic support for Israelis. White House National Security spokesman John Kirby says Iran is complicit in Hamas attacks on Israel, but the U.S. lacks intelligence or evidence. His government has sponsored Palestinian militants and regional terrorist networks, he argues. Iran's assistance for Hamas and Hezbollah will escalate tensions, despite Israel's efforts. Never-ending circle. Indeed, several countries globally are making significant moves in this direction. Today, EU High Representative for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy Joseph Borrell summoned diplomatic representatives from both warring parties to an emergency meeting of EU foreign ministers to address Israel. He said Palestinian Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki and Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen accepted. The PA representative will present its view. Turkey is willing to mediate peace negotiations between warring factions. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan is meeting with international counterparts to examine the Gaza violence spike. Turkish media said President Erdogan's U.S. heads of state intervention would follow the foreign minister's diplomacy. Honoring the 75-year relationship between the two countries, the White House was lit in blue and white Israeli flag colors. They stated that such a gesture showed the American people's continued support for Israel despite Hamas's horrors. However, U.S. and European leaders have supported Israel consistently. The leaders of France, Germany, Italy, the UK, and the U.S. delivered official responses today in response to their calls, according to the U.S. Embassy in Israel. Leaders' unified statement: this day, President Macron of France, Chancellor Schulz of Germany, Prime Minister Meloni of Italy, Prime Minister Sunak of the UK, and President Biden of the U.S. renew our commitment to Israel. Hamas' heinous terrorism is certainly condemned. We categorically assert that Hamas' violent acts are without legitimacy or legality and must be universally condemned. Terrorism can never be justified. In recent days, Hamas militants slaughtered families in their homes and at a music festival, shocking the entire world. Our countries will stand by Israel as it defends itself and its people against such atrocities. We further emphasize that now is not the time for Israel's opponents to exploit these attacks. We all recognize the Palestinian people's legitimate aspirations and support equal measures of justice and freedom for Israelis and Palestinians alike. Nevertheless, make no mistake, Hamas does not represent these goals and offers the Palestinian people nothing but more terror and bloodshed. We will work together as Israel's allies and friends in the coming days to safeguard Israel and achieve a stable and cohesive Middle East. In conclusion, Israel, Hamas, and Hezbollah are fighting in Gaza and spreading to other areas. Everyone hopes there will be no more victims and the Middle East will return to normal without violent groups.